There, folks. Well, hi there, folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. So great to be along with you today. Here we go again. The Hantavirus. Hantavirus. I don't care how you say it. It looks to me like another scheme. Right now, I think it's a money grab scheme. And there's one little place where nobody's looking when it comes to where they want the money to go. Of course, we got our eye out for another vaccine to come out and everybody run to that. But I'm looking at the World Health Organization. I'm going to prove to you why I think the WHO is now looking to use the Hantavirus, where these folks on a cruise ship, spread by rodents, 40% death rate, but very hard to spread human to human, which is why we're going to play down the hysteria here a little bit. But I think this is about trying to get the United States back into the World Health Organization. I'm going to make the prediction right now. It ain't going to work against President Trump. So we're going to talk about that today on the program, and we'll give you the real truth about the Hantavirus. Today is Dr. Victory. Kelly Victory is our guest. She is with the Wellness Company. And speaking of the Wellness Company, look, the best thing you can do for anything is to be prepared. So even with this Hantavirus now bursting out onto the scene, in their contagion kit, they have hydroxychloroquine. From what I'm being told, hydroxychloroquine has shown promise against the Hantavirus, but who knows what else may come out. You should get one of these contagion prescription medication kits. They've got all kinds of pharmaceuticals in there that will help you survive any pandemic or plandemic. And so the contagion kit you can get at twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off, of course. twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT for 10% off. All right, with that, let's get the show started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, welcome, everybody. So here is my prediction. The media is going to blow this out of proportion. The World Health Organization is going to quietly play it down, but all the while stoking the flames to say, oh, no, this could get really big if we're not careful. We need money. And it starts, by the way, with the mainstream media.
As 17 Americans and one British national at the center of the Hantavirus surge head to the U.S., health leaders confirm one of them has tested positive for the virus. Health and Human Services say the person doesn't have any symptoms, but the agency reports a second passenger is showing signs of sickness. According to HHS, both individuals have been separated from the other passengers.
Hazmat suits, no sign of illness, but be careful anyway. One passenger has died. You know how many people there are in the world, even on that cruise ship. And so here we go again. Now I want to bring in my very dear friend, Dr. Kelly Victory. She is with the Wellness Company. Dr. Victory, it's great to have you on the program.
Thanks, as always, for having me, Grant.
All right. You see the hazmat suits, the hysteria and the reporter's voice. Here we go again.
Well, let's be very clear. Hantavirus is a real virus, Grant. It is spread largely through the feces, urine, and saliva of infected rodents. So people who are potential exposure are people who are in contact with those things. But when you take into consideration the millions and millions of people in the United States alone who perhaps sweep out their garage, a musty cabin, a boat, an attic, where there are rodent feces, and yet despite that, since 1993, we have had fewer than 900 reported cases in the U.S. of hantavirus. That comes out to less than 30 a year. So it is still very uncommon. Now, fast forward to this cruise ship. In all likelihood, these people who did get infected were exposed through infected rodent feces byproducts on that boat. We've been given some, story about somebody who went bird watching or something on shore and then potentially brought the virus back, but there's no indication that that actually happened. The far more likely scenario is an exposure to rat feces and rat byproducts on this boat. And I agree with you, despite the fact that hantavirus can, if untreated, have a significantly high mortality rate. This has all the markings so far of a lot of fear porn. We're seeing, these photo ops with people in hazmat outfits, masked, very somber looking. And then you pan to the side and there, lo and behold, is a cameraman who has zero protective equipment on. So, we're already starting to see the fraud in it. And then, of course, they're talking about, human to human transmission, which is extraordinarily rare with hantavirus, if it happens at all. We've been told that the Andes strain can potentially be transmitted human to human. Very, very uncommon, but again, no proof that that's what's happening. Right. So I think that they are making maximum of taking advantage of this to create as much concern as possible.
I'm going to get into why I think the WHO, World Health Organization, is making a money play on this in a second. But am I mistaken? So when I first got into TV, my first job was in Missoula, Montana. I would go camping every weekend. It was the greatest place to have a first job in TV. We would go. And we would never use the little, I call them huts, but they weren't even huts. They were basically not even a shed. They were just a lean-to with a roof that you could use for protection in some of the national parks. We would always not stay in those. And I'm saying we were thinking about the hantavirus. That was what we were worried about all the way back then. Now that's going back 30 years ago.
Well, certainly, I live on a ranch, and I do things on an annual basis where I'm sweeping out areas where clearly there have been rodents, and in my garage, my barn, places of that sort. And I wear an N95 respirator mask when I do it, simply on the off chance that I'm aerosolizing not only hantavirus, but a lot of other things that get carried by rodents, and that I don't want to be breathing into my lung. It's the one application when a mask actually works, unlike for COVID, for a respiratory virus. Hantavirus is not a respiratory virus. It is not spread via respiration. It is by inhaling aerosolized particles that come from feces and urine. So you were right to be cautious. But again, as I said, the millions of people who don't wear a protective mask when they're doing what I do, and yet still we have fewer than 30 cases per year in the U.S.
All right, 30 cases a year per year. This thing has been around forever. And then it breaks out on a cruise ship. Seems like cruise ships are like the petri dish for everything, whether it's Legionnaires or now this. How would a passenger on a cruise ship? I mean, I can only imagine down in the bowels of the ship, there's rats running all over the place, but the person shouldn't be down there. I can't imagine on a cruise ship we'd be really getting into food. Like, how would somebody get this?
Well, that's a great question, and precisely why I believe that the WHO totally botched their response. This likely came through the air vents, through there's recirculated air on a ship. They are closed cabins. The vast majority of the cabins are interior, don't have a window. So therefore, they rely on recirculated air through the ventilation system. So probably there was aerosolized rodent, bacteria or feces, viral particles from the feces or urine. And so what the WHO did, quarantining these people in their cabins where they were forced to breathe recirculated air for days on end, rather than getting them off of that ship, allowing them to breathe fresh air. My goodness, you could have taken them somewhere and put them in open air tents, and they would have been quarantined them there if you felt a need to quarantine. Keeping these people locked into the very area where they were likely to be exposed simply increased the risk of people getting infected with this thing. It was absolutely an abysmal response.
You had just mentioned something I had never really knew. I am not a cruise guy. I worry about getting claustrophobic. I would never be in an interior cabin. I just learned from a buddy of mine who goes on cruises all the time that, as you said, the vast majority of cabins are interiors with no windows. Right. And they put TVs in there that look like windows to make it look like the water's going. I am not locking myself on the inside of a ship with no light, or I don't know who would do that, but fascinating to say the least that it could be from the air vents. Then they lock people in the cabins. It seems like the complete opposite thing to do, Dr. Victory.
No, it was a terrible response, and frankly was unnecessary and entirely. Now they've evacuated these people, some of them going to Nebraska. They're quarantining people who have no symptoms. And this is what makes me start to believe that there's something else afoot. Not because hantavirus isn't real, not because it can't have a high mortality rate if not recognized or not treated, but because they seem to be optimizing on this. Again, as I said, with the photo ops, with things like, all of a sudden we're starting to hear things like asymptomatic spread. That was the fallacy that they drove during COVID. The idea that somebody could be infected, not know it, have no symptoms, but somehow miraculously be spreading this.
All right.
Again, it's not a respiratory virus. How they're spreading it to others is unbeknownst to me.
Let me just oversimplify this, right? So by and large, most scientists, doctors agree it cannot be spread human to human.
Correct.
Then what is the problem? Then what's the problem? There's not going to be a pandemic.
Exactly. As I said, this Andes strain supposedly has some very, very low potential to be spread human to human, but it requires very close and prolonged contact, meaning, for example, sharing a bed with somebody over a period of days, sharing utensils, not sort of, walking past somebody on a ship or even being in the same room with somebody. So you're correct. This should not have the potential to even become a pandemic. Yeah.
Well,
so if we start to see some strange behavior from this virus, Grant, if, for example, it starts miraculously to be spread human to human, then we probably have something else going on here.
Well, this may be just the excuse many wives will use to not have to sleep in the same bed as their husbands. Then, all right. So I believe there's something more sinister at play. I always do, right? This is the leader of the World Health Organization, reminding the U.S. that we left, and now at a time like this, with all of this dangerous virus now spreading, listen to this.
Health security needs universality. And any vacuum, any space which is not covered actually gives advantage to the virus. And the best immunity we have is solidarity. So because of the event that's happening now, and both Argentina and the US are affected, I think they will reconsider their decisions, because they can see how important universality is for health security, because viruses don't care about our politics, and they don't care about our borders, and they don't care about all the excuses that we may have. So I hope this could be a good lesson for the whole world, because solidarity is our best immunity. I repeat.
500 million is what the United States was giving the World Health Organization, really for basically nothing. That's what he's doing. He's recruiting the United States back to the World Health Organization and Argentina. He wants Argentina back as well.
Let me be very clear for the record here, Grant. Tedros Ghebreyesus and the World Health Organization do not care at all about the world's health. Okay, the WHO is the long arm of the Chinese Communist Party. Tedros himself was handpicked by the CCP. This is a power grab. You're right. Ghebreyesus and the WHO are very, very unhappy that the U.S. has left, but it has nothing to do with, because they're concerned about the health of Americans. It is, number one, about money, and more importantly, it's about the fact that any member nation, anyone who is a member of the WHO, has signed on an agreement to abdicate the sovereignty of their nation to the WHO in a time of crisis, a crisis of the WHO's definition. So this would certainly allow the WHO and Tedros and the CCP to control and mandate things that we, if we were a member nation, would be required or obligated to do. That could be everything from limiting our travel to vaccination mandates. I have been long said we need to be out of the WHO. The sovereignty of the United States is not negotiable, and we are perfectly capable of managing things. Look, we aren't the ones who are at risk here. Almost every single pandemic that has ever happened in the world has started in Asia. They don't start in the United States. We have a good healthcare system here, and we do not need to turn over the sovereignty of our nation, or God forbid, the health and welfare and activities of American people to the WHO.
Amen to that. With that, it's great to be prepared. And so the wellness company has this contagion kit. They've got a lot of kits. I've got right here, I've got just the basic emergency medical kit, which I think is a basic every home should have, ivermectin, many other prescription medications in here, amoxicillin, a Z-Pak, doxycycline, et cetera. What is the contagion kit, doctor? And can you explain to me why people should have one in their home?
Absolutely. We created the contagion kit, and all of our kits, frankly, to contain a broad range of prescription medications, Grant, so that people would have those things on hand before the crisis strikes. Because of what we saw during COVID, the fact that many medications were limited, pharmacists were unwilling to fill legitimate prescriptions written by licensed physicians, and on and on. The contagion kit in particular contains not only repurposed prescription medications like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin that have shown great application against a number of viruses, not only COVID, but that kit also contains an inhaled steroid, which is very, very helpful in a number of respiratory involvement, things that involve the respiratory tree or can cause a pulmonary syndrome. So again, we're talking about having these things on hand ahead of time. Now, while there are no large, well-controlled studies, for example, to show that hantavirus can be treated by ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, there are excellent studies that would lead us to believe that that is the case. Both COVID-19 and hantavirus share in common that they are single-stranded mRNA viruses. And ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine interact with and interrupt both the replication of those types of viruses as well as their ability to enter the cell. So although the viruses themselves, COVID-19 and hantavirus, are very, very different, one's a respiratory virus, one is not, they share in common that they are mRNA viruses, and therefore we have every reason to believe that medications like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine would be very useful in case this actually did spin out of control or become something very different than what it is right now.
All right, so twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT to really be prepared for anything with this contagion kit. And I would urge you to peruse some of the other products there. It's so funny, you mentioned hydrochloroquine and then ivermectin. You realize you're going to trigger every leftist out there. But the reality is this stuff works, and it is now proven, Dr. Victory.
Absolutely. We have a multitude of studies and many, many hundreds of studies that showed how effective ivermectin was, for example, with COVID. They simply could not allow that to be the case or allow that to be common knowledge, or they would never have gotten away with foisting the COVID mRNA shots on everyone under the emergency use authorization. Speaking of, quote, vaccines, Grant, as you intimated, as soon as this hantavirus thing hit the news waves, lo and behold, there are 13 vaccines in the pipeline for hantavirus. So I guess we should have expected that. So I can guarantee if this virus does start to spread unnaturally, they will be more and more interested in rolling out these vaccines. And they, once again, I guarantee it, will suppress the efficacy of repurposed, safe, readily available drugs like hydroxychloroquine.
Let me just remind everybody, if it starts to spread like we don't expect it to do.
Correct.
But the way they tell us it's spreading is by faking the spread, because remember the PCR tests, they said COVID was spreading like crazy. Meanwhile, it was the flu or whatever else, and it wasn't even really COVID. And they set the tests up, they set the media up, they set the narrative up. So we really don't even know if it's spreading based on the concocted way that they come up with the ways to tell us it's spreading.
Bingo. And if they want to try to gin this up into something that it's not, they're already laying the groundwork. I said, first of all, the PCR test. absolutely faulty test was responsible for an untold number of, quote, false positives, and really fomented the fear and caused the COVID pandemic to spin out of control very quickly. Then this fallacy of, quote, asymptomatic spread, that people, particularly with hantavirus, that, as we've said previously, is very, very, very limited in human-to-human spread, if it happens at all. So the idea that somebody with nary a symptom can be spreading this thing to somebody else, it is a necessary part of the narrative if they want to get people to believe that this is something for which they should be fearful. I traveled last weekend, people in the Denver airport all wearing masks all of a sudden after months of not, and I guarantee it's because somehow they've been led to believe hantavirus is hiding under the seat.
Yeah. So 13 vaccines in the works now, you said?
Yes. 13 of them. Yes.
Now, hantavirus has been around forever. Did these just pop up? I mean, it's been in the news only a few weeks, and so all of a sudden they roll this out, which then leads me to be even more suspicious that they plan this stuff. Here's going to be the rollout. Here's where we're already this far along with the vaccine. We're not selling any COVID vaccinations anymore, or experimental shots. We're not making any money off of that, so we got to figure out something else. 13, they can throw these onto the board that quickly?
Well, presumably some of them have been in the works for a while, because hantavirus does occur in much higher numbers in other parts of the world, and particularly places that have limited access to healthcare and have a higher rodent infestations. But the reality is, all of a sudden, there are 13 of them in the pipeline, several of them from Moderna. Now, until the COVID-19 shots, Moderna had never successfully launched a vaccine to the public. And the only reason they got that one out there was because of the emergency use authorization, and they got in through that loophole.
All right, so they use the media for all this. This soundbite encapsulates everything, okay? It's CNN, Jake Tapper, and he's talking to, I always botch his name, Bhattacharya, is that how you say his name? Bhattacharya, yeah. So he's talking to him. This has the hysteria involved in it. This has the ramping up of the hantavirus in it. And, of course, it has blame Trump in it. Okay, so now Trump is responsible for botching the reaction to this. Watch.
I want to ask you about concerns we've heard from a lot of public health officials about the CDC's response, or as they say it, lack thereof. They say that the CDC should have deployed a team to help investigate the outbreak. They say the CDC should have deployed a team to collect samples to help with contact tracing. They say the CDC should have been communicating sooner through press brief.
I'm just going to interrupt and say, when a reporter says they say, he's talking about critics, and it's usually himself. And they're just talking about a phantom they, but he's saying they say. He really means himself. It really means Jake Tapper thinks this, okay?
Briefings and press guidance and news briefings, and that its health alert network should have been more active and been more clear about how the CDC is involved, especially since we're no longer part of the World Health Organization. They say that had this been a virus that spreads more easily than the hantavirus, we would be in real trouble right now. How do you respond to all these critics?
All right, before I let him respond, but it's not a virus that's other than the hantavirus. It's the hantavirus. So why would you respond to it as if it's Ebola when it's the hantavirus?
Correct. It's not as if there was an outbreak of smallpox on this boat or Ebola. There was an outbreak of hantavirus on a small excursion ship that is likely infested with rats because of the areas it travels and because it doesn't have the same restrictions as a Carnival cruise line or a Norwegian. So this is not unusual. There are 3 cases. We have no indication that there was actually human-to-human spread because the other people who got infected were also breathing the same contaminated air.
It's so disingenuous, isn't it, Dr. Victory? Every single one of his criticisms is disingenuous. And I'm all about criticizing the government. You know me. But this is disingenuous right here.
Oh, 100%. And the idea that we should be back in the WHO for all the reasons I laid out previously, they do not have any concern about our health. This is a power grab. This is control. And one of the main reasons the U.S. got out was not just because we were overfunding them, but more importantly, because of that treaty, that pandemic treaty, so to speak, that would have forced us to commit to following the dictums of the WHO over, our own agencies in a time of a crisis. And they can determine what that crisis is, by the way.
Let me play the doctor's response to all this.
Well, I think it's they didn't see what the CDC has been doing, right? So we are in touch with the WHO. We're in touch with the international health organizations, including the one in Spain, and we have been providing technical assistance to all of those organizations all the way through. This is not COVID, Jake, and we don't want to treat it like COVID. We don't want to cause a public panic over this. We want to treat it with the hantavirus protocols that we're successful in containing outbreaks in the past, and so we followed those protocols. Like we gave this health alert is coming out because again there's this discrete event of the 17 arriving in the United States very, very soon. And so we just want to make sure that the medical community understands this. We've been communicating the last week as the press attention has picked up more with the public as is appropriate given the nature of this disease. The key message I want to send to your audience is that this is not COVID. This is not going to lead to the kind of outbreak. And I was pleased to hear your the opening segment where you emphasize that, because we shouldn't be panicking when the evidence doesn't warrant it.
All right, Doc, before I let you go, I'll let you respond to what he said there and overall thoughts.
No, I think that Jay is quite right. More importantly, I wish he would point out the idiocy of taking these 17 people who got off this boat who have zero symptoms and quarantining them with no symptoms. If you are concerned about their health and well-being, you should treat all of them with ivermectin and or hydroxychloroquine. Okay, so that because if they actually are, infected but just haven't gotten sick yet, well, then that's the time to act. If you're concerned they may have been exposed to hantavirus on that boat, then the answer is to treat them, not quarantine them and wait till they get sick in hopes that you can then gin up the numbers. I mean, this is basic, this is sort of critical thinking 101, people. And although I agree in general with Dr. Bhattacharya has said, I wish he would go on to say, let's stop the madness, stop spinning up the fear. And if this thing starts to act differently, Grant, if we all of a sudden start to see human-to-human transmission of this thing where we wouldn't expect it, then I smell a rat.
Yeah. Great stuff, as always, Dr. Victory. It's always good to see you. Thank you for your being a voice of reason, you and the other wellness company doctors. And, thank you. Where can people find you on social media?
My only social media footprint is on X. I'm at Dr. Kelly Victory, Dr. Kelly Victory, and then obviously at the Wellness Company as well.
All right, Dr. Victory, thank you so much. Again, always good to see you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Grant.
All right. So, folks, again, you heard Dr. Victory. Hydrochloroquine, ivermectin, where you can get that, of course, is the Wellness Company, twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT for 10% off. And you will have access to all the things that you need to keep you and your family safe. It's called the Contagion Kit when dealing with this situation. But there's the emergency medical kit that also has ivermectin in it and a host of other prescription medications. But a doctor will walk you through the best choice, too, as well. So twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. I will see all of you on the Real America's Voice show tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. How would I forget what time my show is? I would never. 7 p.m. Eastern time on Real America's Voice. We will see you there. Stinchfield's Army rolls. Thanks for watching, everybody.